There is an animal on this planet that can outrun a wolf, outrun a racehorse, and nearly outrun a professional Olympic sprinter, and somehow we've spent centuries calling it a coward. There's a second fact that's even stranger. The female of this species can become pregnant again before she's even given birth to her first litter. She carries two separate generations inside her body at the same time. No other mammal on Earth does this as a matter of routine. This is the hare. Not the shy, nibbling, always fleeing sidekick from children's stories, a finely tuned survival machine, refined over hundreds of thousands of years into something closer to a biological weapon. Today we're going to take this animal apart down to the molecule, every trick, every adaptation, and around the halfway mark, I'm going to walk you through the one discovery that will completely rewrite how you see this creature. Stick around for that. And hey, if this kind of deep dive into the animal world is your thing, go ahead and subscribe now, because we're just getting started. Let's kill the biggest misconception immediately. A hare is not a rabbit. They look similar, long ears, fluffy coats, but the gap between them is as wide as the gap between a wolf and a golden retriever. Rabbits dig burrows, entire underground cities with multiple entrances, chambers, and tunnels. They live in colonies, and their young are born blind, naked, and utterly helpless. Without a burrow and a mother's body heat, a newborn rabbit dies within hours. The hare is the opposite in almost every respect. It never digs a burrow. It lives alone, sleeping in a shallow depression in open ground called a form. And its young are born already furred, eyes open, and able to run within minutes of birth. Not hours, minutes. Hold on to that fact. We're coming back to it, and it's going to surprise you. Hares belong to the order Lagomorpha, not Rodentia, a completely separate taxonomic branch, and the distinction isn't cosmetic, it's structural. In the upper jaw, hares carry 4 incisors instead of 2 large front teeth and 2 small peg-like teeth directly behind them. Rodents only have 2. It sounds like a minor detail, 2 extra teeth, but it's precisely why, in the early 20th century, scientists pulled lagomorphs out of the rodent order entirely and gave them their own classification. In science, nothing is ever really trivial. The genus Lepus contains more than 30 species worldwide, spanning Arctic tundra to African savanna, the cold islands of Japan to the hot plains of Argentina. Hares live everywhere except Antarctica and Australia, though humans did manage to introduce rabbits to Australia in 1859, triggering one of the worst ecological disasters in history. That's a rabbit story, though, not a hare story, and it's for another day. The two species most familiar to us are the European brown hare and the mountain hare. The brown hare is the larger of the two, body length 57 to 68 centimeters, weight 4 to 7 kilograms, roughly the size of a large Maine Coon cat. Ears run up to 14 centimeters, and the tail is wedge-shaped with a dark, almost black upper side. German zoologist Peter Simon Pallas first formally described it back in 1778, nearly 2.5 centuries ago. The mountain hare is smaller, 2.5 to 5 kilograms, body length 45 to 65 centimeters, and interestingly, females run slightly larger than males across both species. But the mountain hare has one trick the brown hare doesn't fully share. It can completely change coat color. Grayish-brown with a rusty tint in summer, snow-white in winter, save for the very tips of the ears, which stay black, as if someone dipped them in ink. The brown hare lightens in winter too, but never goes fully white. It doesn't need to. It tends to live in open fields and steppe, where stark white against dark soil would be a liability rather than an advantage. Here's something that genuinely humbles me. Hares have been around for an extraordinarily long time. The oldest fossil remains of the European brown hare, found in Italy and Romania, date back roughly 774,000 years, based on genetic and paleontological analysis. Nearly 1 million years, this animal has been running across the landscape. It outlasted the Pleistocene ice ages. It outlasted the extinction of mammoths, woolly rhinos, and giant deer. It outlasted the rise of humanity and every war, city, and highway we've built since. Genetic evidence shows that during the last glacial period, hares survived in refugia, pockets of habitable land in southern Europe, Italy, the Balkans, Asia Minor, and when the ice retreated, they spread back north and are, to this day, running across the very same fields. Now let's look at the hare's real weapon, its own body, which is nothing short of an engineering masterpiece. Every muscle, bone, and joint is built toward one purpose: survival, which for a hare means outrunning everything that wants to eat it. Start with the legs. The hind legs are disproportionately long, far longer than the front, so stand a hare upright and it reaches the height of a small dog. That's not incidental, it's a spring. When a hare pushes off with its hind legs, it's firing them like a catapult, covering 3 to 4 meters in a single bounce, at 3 to 4 bounces per second. 10 bounces cover 30 to 40 meters. Do the math on that. The muscle tissue in those hind legs is dense with myoglobin, the same oxygen-storing protein that lets dolphins and seals hold their breath underwater for tens of minutes. In a hare, it lets the muscles run at maximum output far longer before lactic acid buildup forces them to slow. That burning sensation you feel sprinting 100 meters? A hare processes that far more efficiently than we do. The result? A brown hare can hit 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. According to the Swedish National Encyclopedia, peak speed tops out at 80 kilometers an hour, sustainable for only about 20 meters at that intensity. Though even its cruising speed of 57 to 70 kilometers an hour is remarkable. That's faster than a lion, faster than a racehorse, whose record sits around 71 kilometers per hour. For comparison, Usain Bolt, the fastest human who has ever lived, clocked 44.72 kilometers per hour. A hare runs at nearly double the speed of history's greatest sprinter. Picture that, a 5-kilogram animal outrunning a 94-kilogram elite athlete, like a house cat overtaking a motorcycle. But raw speed is only half the defense, and not even the most important half. A cheetah or a specially bred greyhound could theoretically run a hare down in a straight line, which is exactly why a hare never runs in a straight line. It runs in zigzags, hard, full-speed turns, left, right, left again, a sudden burst forward, another turn. For a predator closing at 60 kilometers an hour, every one of those turns costs a second, costs momentum, costs energy, and a heavier predator's mass works against it in every pivot. A hare is light enough to carve through those turns like a race car. It doesn't outrun its pursuer so much as it exhausts it. That distinction matters. I'll admit, the first time I watched slow motion footage of a hare running, I didn't believe what I was seeing. This isn't panicked, chaotic fear. It's calculation, cold, precise, refined over millions of years. The lower leg bones, tibia and fibula, are partially fused together, which reduces flexibility in the foot but adds structural rigidity. At 80 kilometers an hour, every foot strike hits with force several times the animal's own body weight, and those fused bones absorb it, functioning much like a truck's leaf spring, or like the carbon plates now embedded in elite marathon shoes, the exact technology behind recent world records in track and field. The hare's been running on this same principle for hundreds of thousands of years. Muscle mass is concentrated high, near the hip and thigh, while the lower leg stays light, almost pure tendon, reducing the leg's rotational inertia so it can swing faster. The same principle engineers use in racing wheels. The lighter the rim, the faster the acceleration and braking. Formula One teams spend millions shaving grams off wheels. The hare got this for free. Its spine is remarkably flexible, acting as an extra spring during the run, compressing on landing, releasing on push-off, adding centimeters to every leap. The whole body is streamlined, muscular, almost fat-free, built to cut air resistance to a minimum, with large nostrils that flare wide during a run to pull in maximum oxygen. Every part of this animal is a projectile, a biological rocket built for one job: launch, and don't get caught. Now, the ears, the hare's most famous feature. Everyone assumes they're purely for hearing, and they are extraordinary at that job. A hare detects the faintest rustle of a branch, the softest wing beat, every sound in its environment. The ears function like parabolic antennas, gathering sound and channeling it into the ear canal, and each one rotates independently, one forward, one backward, scanning a full 360 degrees of acoustic space. All true, but it's only half the story. A hare's ears are also an air conditioner. Just beneath the thin skin runs a dense network of blood vessels. After a full-speed sprint from a fox, when the hare is overheating, those vessels dilate and blood surges into the ears, releasing excess heat through the thin skin before returning cool to the body. In cold weather, the vessels constrict, blood flow drops to a minimum, and almost no heat escapes. It's a fully adjustable radiator, no pump or coolant required. And here's the elegant part. The hotter the climate, the longer the ears. This isn't coincidence, it's a documented biological rule. The Cape hare, native to Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, has ears reaching half its body length. Imagine a person nearly 6 feet tall with 3-foot ears. The mountain hare, living in tundra, has noticeably shorter ears. No reason to bleed heat when it's -40 outside. This is Allen's rule, formulated by American zoologist Joel Allen back in 1877. The warmer the environment, the longer the protruding body parts in warm-blooded animals. Hares are practically the textbook illustration of this law, literally used in biology classrooms as the go-to example. Now for the most underrated superpower of all, one almost nobody thinks about: the eyes. They sit on the sides of the head, high up, not forward-facing like ours or a predator's, and this gives the hare nearly 360 degrees of vision. It sees in front, to the sides, and behind, all without turning its head. Sneaking up on a hare from behind is close to impossible. It will notice movement every time. But there's a price. The lateral placement sacrifices binocular vision, the kind that lets an animal accurately judge distance, and leaves a tiny blind spot directly in front of the nose, where the two fields of vision don't overlap. That's why hares appear cross-eyed up close. To examine something right in front of its face, it has to turn its head sideways and look with one eye. And there's a strange side effect while running. When a hare is intently tracking a pursuer behind it, its vision locks backward, and it can slam straight into a tree, a bush, or even a standing hunter. Not because it's stupid, not because it's blind, because in that instant, its entire visual system is fixated on the threat behind it. Everything else becomes irrelevant. Be honest, did you know a hare could see almost all the way around itself? Drop a comment if that surprised you. I'd genuinely like to know. Now we're entering territory almost nobody talks about openly, because frankly, it isn't pretty. And yet, it's one of the key reasons hares survive where other herbivores can't. A hare is a strict 100% vegetarian. In summer, it eats grass, clover, dandelions, shoots, whatever grows across fields and meadows. Winter is harsher. Tree bark, thin willow, birch, rowan, larch, even spruce twigs, nutritionally unimpressive material, mostly cellulose and tough fiber. A cow solves this problem with a 4-chambered stomach and hours of cud chewing. A hare solves it differently, more elegantly, and considerably stranger. It has an oversized cecum relative to its body, home to billions of microorganisms that ferment cellulose and synthesize B vitamins, amino acids, and volatile fatty acids. The cecum is essentially a fermentation vat, a bioreactor built into a living animal. But there's a catch. The cecum sits after the small intestine, the section of the gut responsible for most nutrient absorption. The bacteria dutifully produce vitamins and proteins, but the body has already missed its chance to absorb them. The nutrients end up in the wrong place entirely. The solution is called cecotrophy. A hare produces 2 entirely different types of droppings. The first are the familiar dry, hard little pellets you've seen on any forest path. Genuine waste. Fiber the body has already extracted everything useful from. The second type are soft, moist, mucus-coated capsules called cecotropes, and these aren't waste at all. They're a concentrated nutrient package, a vitamin bomb, a protein shake. The hare eats these directly from its own body, swallowing them whole so the protective mucus coating doesn't break down in the mouth. The cecotropes travel back into the stomach, continue fermenting for several hours, then pass through the small intestine again, where all those vitamins, proteins, and fatty acids finally get absorbed. It sounds, to put it mildly, unappetizing, but it's brilliant, a 2-pass digestive system. The hare is effectively chewing its cud, just not through its mouth like a cow, through the other end of the digestive tract. Scientists call hares and rabbits pseudo-ruminants for exactly this reason. And it's cecotrophy that lets a hare survive on a diet that would kill most mammals its size. Tree bark in the dead of winter. Dry, brittle steppe grass, no problem. This process runs on a circadian rhythm. Most cecotropes are produced at night and early morning, and the hare eats them immediately, which is why you'll almost never find one lying on the ground, only the ordinary dry pellets. When I first came across this, I had to triple check it. It sounded too strange to be real, but it's confirmed across multiple studies. Researchers at Russia's Severtsov Institute of Ecology and Evolution have documented the specialized villi structure in the hare's gut lining, adapted specifically for this process. Even Aristotle, more than 2,000 years ago, described something similar in hares, and it turns out he was right. And now we reach the fact I promised you at the start, the discovery that upended zoologists' understanding of what mammalian reproduction is even capable of: superfoetation. Superfoetation is when a female becomes pregnant a second time before delivering her first litter, a second pregnancy layered directly on top of the first. In humans, this event is so vanishingly rare that in the entire recorded history of medicine, only 12 confirmed cases exist worldwide. 12 out of 8 billion people. In most mammals, this would be classified as a pathology, a biological error. In hares, it's completely normal. A routine, everyday, regularly used reproductive mechanism. Here's exactly how it works. Pregnancy in the brown hare lasts about 42 days. On day 37 or 38, with only 4 or 5 days left before birth, the female mates again. Ovulation occurs, new eggs are fertilized, and a second pregnancy begins developing, while the first is still ongoing. At that point, her body is running two separate sets of corpus luteum simultaneously, and two sets of embryos at completely different developmental stages. She is, quite literally, carrying offspring that are nearly ready to be born, alongside offspring that were conceived only days earlier in the same womb at the same time. She delivers the first litter, and just 38 days after the second conception, rather than the usual 42, she delivers the second. A 4-day saving on every reproductive cycle. Doesn't sound like much? Do the math across a breeding season running from March to September, roughly 6 months. That 4-day saving is enough to squeeze in an entire extra litter, 3 or 4 additional pups that would never have existed otherwise. Across a lifetime, that's dozens of additional offspring from superfoetation alone. This was studied by a team at the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research in Berlin. Kathleen Röhlig, Frank Göritz, Jörn Zwickel, Robert Hermes, Heribert Hofer, and Thomas Hildebrandt, who published their findings in 2010 in Nature Communications, one of the most respected scientific journals in the world. Using high-resolution ultrasound on live pregnant hares under controlled conditions, they confirmed it definitively. Superfoetation in hares is real, regular, reproducible, and evolutionarily entrenched. Not a pathology, not an anomaly, a strategy. Researchers believe it evolved specifically to maximize reproductive output within a single breeding season. Every day saved is another potential litter that summer, and every additional litter is another set of genes with a chance of reaching the next generation. For an animal that lives, on average, just 1 to 2 years, and risks being eaten every single day of that life, every day genuinely counts. And this, for me, is the single most striking fact in this entire story. More than the speed, more than the vision, more than the zigzag running. Superfoetation. A hare doesn't just outrun death, it outpaces death reproductively. It produces offspring with such speed and volume that predators, disease, cold, and hunters simply cannot wipe out the population. This isn't a survival strategy for one individual, it's a survival strategy for the entire species, and it's worked for 700,000 years. A female brown hare can produce 3 to 4 litters in a single breeding season, each containing 1 to 4 young, occasionally up to 8, across a breeding season running March through July, extending into September, or even year-round in warmer climates. That means one female can give birth to as many as 15 to 20 young in a single summer. Over a lifespan of 2 to 3 years, that's dozens of offspring from one animal. Dozens. Here's a detail I stumbled onto while researching this that genuinely stunned me. Hare milk is among the fattiest, most calorie-dense milk of any mammal on Earth. Roughly 12 to 15% fat, compared to 3 to 4% in cow's milk and 3 to 5% in human breast milk. Hare milk is 3 to 4 times richer than cow's milk. Why? Because a mother hare nurses her young only once or twice a day, for just a few minutes each time. She has no time for long feeding sessions. Every minute spent near her young is a minute a predator might notice them. So the milk has to deliver everything in a single mouthful. One sip, enough for a full day. Pure concentrate. And it works. The young grow at an astonishing rate, largely independent within 2 to 3 weeks, fully independent from their mother within a month. It's yet another example of how every single facet of hare biology, from milk composition to eye placement, serves one purpose: survival. Everything else is decoration. We mentioned earlier that leverets are born furred and sighted, but this deserves a closer look, because the gap between a newborn leveret and a newborn rabbit kit isn't a nuance, it's the difference between two entirely opposite survival strategies, each shaped by millions of years of evolution. A newborn rabbit is naked, blind, deaf, a completely helpless pink lump. Without a burrow and a mother's warmth, it dies of exposure within hours. The leveret is its exact mirror opposite. It's born out in the open, in a shallow depression in the grass. No burrow, no walls, no roof, and yet it's fully furred. Its eyes are open from the first seconds of life. Its ears function. Its nose already detects scent. And within minutes, literally minutes, not hours, it can run. Not crawl, not stumble, run. This is called precocial development, from the Latin precox, meaning early, when an offspring is born at an advanced developmental stage, ready for independent life. The opposite is altricial development, where the newborn is helpless and requires extended care. Humans, notably, are extremely altricial. Our infants can't even hold their own heads up for weeks, let alone walk. A foal stands within an hour. A leveret runs within minutes. A human infant walks after roughly a year. That's the scale of difference we're talking about. Right after birth, the mother does something remarkable. She licks her young clean, removing the scent of amniotic fluid that could attract predators, then places each one alone in a separate hiding spot, several meters apart. One leveret, one location, each. Why? The logic is simple and brutally efficient. If a predator finds one, the rest survive. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, a strategy invented not by Wall Street risk managers, but by mother hares 700,000 years ago. After that, she leaves. She doesn't sit with her young, doesn't warm them with her body, doesn't guard the nest. She returns once or twice a day, usually at night, for a few minutes at a time, to nurse, feeding sessions lasting 5 to 7 minutes. Afterwards, she licks the genital area of each young one to remove the scent of urine that might reveal their location, then leaves again immediately. This isn't neglect, it's calculation. A large adult hare lingering near her young would attract predators far faster than a tiny, motionless leveret sitting silently in the grass. The mother protects her offspring precisely by staying away from them. And here's a detail that genuinely touched me. A mother hare will nurse young that aren't even hers. If she comes across a hungry leveret that isn't her own, she feeds it without hesitation. In places with dense hare populations, the young essentially become communal, a spontaneous, unregulated, collective form of motherhood. No agreements, no hierarchy, no territorial disputes. Just milk for whichever young one is hungry. It's one of the most quietly humane facts about this animal. Even though humane is the wrong word entirely, it's pure evolutionary strategy. But it still feels warm. Be honest, have you ever come across a tiny leveret sitting alone in the grass in the wild? If you have, know this. Its mother was almost certainly within a few hundred meters. You just never saw her. And please, don't touch it, don't take it home. It hasn't been abandoned. It's waiting for its mother, and she's coming back. A hare is a loner. No packs, no prides, no herds, no colonies. For most of the year, every hare lives entirely on its own, patrolling a home range it knows by heart, feeding, resting, hiding, alone. But spring changes everything. Hormones take over, the breeding season arrives, and what follows is what the English call March madness. The phrase itself comes directly from the spring behavior of hares, and gave rise to the idiom mad as a March hare. That very hare inspired Lewis Carroll's March Hare in Alice in Wonderland, published in 1865. Males, called jacks, chase females across open fields at full speed, leaping, cutting, maneuvering. Normally secretive, nocturnal hares suddenly become visible in broad daylight. Females have only a brief window of receptiveness, a few hours within each 6-week reproductive cycle, and competition among males is fierce, but a female isn't always ready. If a male is too persistent, too pushy, too impatient, she stops, rises up on her hind legs, and strikes him across the face with her front paws. Hare's box. For decades, textbooks and nature documentaries describe these spring boxing matches as fights between rival males competing for a female. Research over recent decades has overturned that entirely. In most cases, it's the female boxing the male. She's fending off an overeager suitor, testing his stamina and persistence, or simply telling him, not now, back off. It isn't aggression for its own sake, it's a filter, a test. If he can take it, he's proven strong and persistent enough that his genes are worth passing on. If he can't, he leaves. Natural selection, playing out live. These bouts can look ferocious, fur flying in every direction, torn ears left scarred by the end of the season. But serious, life-threatening injuries are rare. It's ritual, not warfare, and it's one of the most striking spring spectacles in European wildlife. Two hares standing upright in the morning mist against a bright green field, trading blows with their front paws. Genuinely mesmerizing to watch. And here's another twist. When a female finally is ready to mate, she doesn't simply wait. She bolts, sprinting across fields, ditches, hedgerows, with a crowd of males chasing behind her in a full endurance race. Whoever lasts longest earns the right to mate. She isn't selecting for looks or size. She's selecting for the single objective criterion that matters: who kept up. Evolution, decided through a foot race. A hare's list of enemies is long. Wolf, fox, lynx, goshawk, golden eagle, eagle owl, pine marten, feral dogs, and always humans. It can't fight any of them. No fangs, no claws capable of wounding, no venom, no armor. Its only weapons are legs and brain, speed and cunning, and it has plenty of the latter. The first line of defense is stillness. A hare lying in its form presses flat against the ground and doesn't move. Not an ear twitch, not a breath. Its coloring blends perfectly into the surroundings, the product of thousands of generations of selection. The greyish-brown summer coat melts into dry earth and last year's grass. The snow-white winter coat of the mountain hare disappears against snow. A predator can pass within 2 meters and never notice. The hare makes a split-second calculation: flee or freeze. If danger is distant, it stays put. If it's approaching but might still pass by, it stays put. Only when the threat closes in does it explode into a sudden explosive burst that startles the predator on its own. That trigger distance, the exact point where flight becomes the better option, is itself the product of evolutionary fine-tuning. Flee too early and you waste energy and reveal your position. Flee too late and you're dead. The second line of defense is the zigzag run we've already discussed, but there's another layer to it. When a hare flees, it uses ground it already knows intimately. Every hare has a home range it patrols daily, knows every bush, every ditch, every stone, every bend in the path. On its home turf, it runs more efficiently. It knows exactly where to cut sharply, where a gully will shave distance off the route, where a stream will wash out its scent trail, where dense brush will block a larger predator entirely. Home field advantage, and the hare uses every inch of it. The third line is genuine tradecraft, scent confusion. Before settling down to rest, a hare runs an actual counter-surveillance operation. It runs forward, then doubles back over its own tracks, a maneuver called a double back. Fresh scent lays directly over the old trail, and a predator tracking by smell can no longer tell which direction the animal actually went. Then the hare makes a huge sideways leap, 2, 3, sometimes 4 meters, a move sometimes called a flank jump. Only after that, on clean ground with no trail at all, does it finally lie down and freeze. A fox following the scent trail hits the doubled back section and gets confused. The trail runs both forward and backwards simultaneously, scent in both directions. It circles, sniffs the air, tries to work it out, moves on, and the trail simply stops, cut clean off. The hare jumped 3 meters sideways, and there's no track on the ground to show it. The fox casts around helplessly, while the hare lies 30 meters away, absolutely motionless, absolutely invisible. I remember the first time I read about this system thinking, this is genuine tactics, a real multi-stage deliberate sequence, not instinctive panic. Each phase serves a distinct logical function. The double back confuses the pursuer, the flank jump breaks the trail, stillness completes the deception. 3 stages, 3 layers of defense, all executed by a 5-kilogram animal with a brain the size of a walnut. One more piece of this puzzle. Hares are primarily crepuscular and nocturnal, emerging to feed at sunset and finishing by dawn, sleeping in their form through the day. That's a defense too. Many of their most dangerous enemies, goshawks and golden eagles, are daytime hunters relying on sharp eyesight in full light. The hare chose darkness, not out of fear of light, but because darkness is a strategic ally. We tend to assume a hare is a primitive creature, a brain weighing just 10 to 12 grams, the size of a large walnut. Hardly a candidate for intelligence, you'd think, but observation says otherwise. Hares learn. They memorize routes, and they recognize different categories of threat and respond to each differently. From a hawk, a hare flattens against the ground, because hawks attack from above and respond to movement. From a fox, it bolts and runs, because a fox hunts by scent and won't give up on a motionless target once it's picked up the trail. Different threats, different strategies, and the hare tells them apart. It isn't simply afraid of everything, it assesses the specific danger and selects the optimal response. Hares living near human settlements gradually habituate to familiar sounds, tractors, cars, dogs on chains, and stop reacting to them, while still responding instantly to anything unfamiliar. A bang, a gunshot, a shout. They distinguish routine from anomaly, a behavior called habituation, and it's a basic marker of cognitive flexibility. Brown hares in agricultural landscapes have even learned to use roads, not to cross them, but to run along them, since asphalt leaves no scent trail. A fox chasing a hare across a field loses the trail the instant it hits the road. Could be coincidence, but hunters and naturalists have documented this behavior far too consistently to dismiss it as one. I'm not claiming a hare is a genius, but underestimating its cognitive abilities is a mistake. An animal hunted by dozens of predator species and still surviving cannot afford to be stupid. Stupid animals go extinct. Hares haven't.
Humans and hares have lived side by side for thousands of years, though calling that relationship warm would be generous. On one side, relentless, millennia-long hunting, European estimates put annual hare harvests above 5 million animals every year, more than the population of many European capital cities. But to humans, the hare has never been just game. It's a symbol, and a deeply layered, contradictory one. In European folklore, the hare represents fertility and springtime renewal. The Easter hare hiding eggs for children isn't a 20th century marketing invention. It's an echo of older pre Christian beliefs treating hares as spirits of spring and rebirth, bringing new life after winter. In medieval alchemy, the hare symbolized transformation, one state becoming another. In Celtic mythology, it connects to the other world, capable of crossing between the realm of the living and the dead. Slavic tradition is far more layered and ambivalent. In Russian and Ukrainian folk tales, the hare shifts between coward, trickster, victim, and hero. In the medieval epic The Tale of Igor's Campaign, a hare crossing Prince Igor's path before his military expedition is read as an omen of disaster. According to a popular legend, Pushkin himself once turned back from a journey in December 1825 after a hare crossed his road, possibly by pure chance, keeping him away from the Decembrist uprising on Senate Square. Whether that's true or simply a beautiful myth, nobody can say for certain, but the fact that the legend persists at all reveals how deeply embedded the hare is in Russian cultural consciousness. In Slavic mythological tradition, the hare is closely tied to the leshy, the forest spirit. Hares were considered his livestock. There was even a persistent folk belief that you should never say the word hare aloud near a body of water because the hare belongs to the forest spirit and is beyond the water spirit's authority. Break the rule, invite misfortune. It sounds like folkloric trivia, but ethnographers have documented it as a genuinely held superstition. Meanwhile, in Japan and China, people don't see a face on the surface of the moon the way Europeans do. They see a hare, the moon hare, pounding rice in a mortar, or in another version, brewing the elixir of immortality. The image originated in China and spread across East Asia, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, where the lunar hare symbolizes selflessness, generosity, and immortality. Quite the contrast with Europe's timid grey coward. Now, for something serious, what's happening to hares right now, and the news isn't good. In Britain, the brown hare population has collapsed from an estimated 4 million during the Victorian era to roughly 800,000 today, an 80% decline in a century. 80% is a quiet catastrophe. The causes: intensive agriculture turning fields into vast monoculture spaces with no cover, pesticides and herbicides wiping out the diversity of grasses hares feed on, the removal of hedgerows, the very shrub corridors that once gave hares shelter and safe movement between fields. Mechanized harvesting with combines running at high speed, destroying leverets in their forms before they can flee. And hunting, traditional hare coursing with hounds, was banned in the UK in 2004, though illegal coursing continues. Continental Europe shows a similar pattern, with brown hare populations declining continuously since the 1960s, over 60 years of uninterrupted decline. The International Union for Conservation of Nature classifies the European brown hare globally as a species of least concern, but that's an average across a very uneven picture. Regionally, the story looks very different. In Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, the brown hare already carries near threatened or threatened status on national and regional red lists. Two other European hare species, the broom hare in Spain and the Corsican hare in Italy, are classified as vulnerable by the IUCN. Disease adds another layer: European brown hare syndrome, a viral illness capable of wiping out entire local populations within weeks. And in 2018, something genuinely alarming happened. Myxomatosis, a virus that traditionally only affected rabbits, made a cross-species jump and began killing Iberian hares across the Iberian Peninsula in Spain and Portugal. It was the first documented case of myxomatosis in hares, and scientists sounded the alarm. If the virus adapts to hares the way it once adapted to rabbits, the consequences for European populations could be severe. Here's a question for you. Have you ever actually seen a hare? Not in a zoo, not in a cartoon, but in the wild, out in a field or near a road. I'm genuinely curious how often people encounter them these days. The mountain hare deserves its own mention here because it's facing a problem that simply didn't exist 1,000 years ago, and its name is climate change. Twice a year, the mountain hare molts, its grey-brown summer coat gradually replaced by pure white winter fur in autumn and the reverse in spring, a mechanism that's worked flawlessly for hundreds of thousands of years. But here's the critical detail. The molt isn't triggered by air temperature or snowfall. It's triggered by photoperiod day length. As days shorten, the pituitary gland signals time to switch to white. As days lengthen, time to switch back to dark. The problem is that snow no longer arrives on schedule. Winters have grown shorter and milder. Snow falls later and melts earlier, while day length hasn't changed at all. It still shortens and lengthens exactly as it did thousands of years ago. The hare turns white before the snow arrives, or the snow disappears while the hare is still white. A white hare on brown ground isn't camouflage. It's a target, bright and visible from hundreds of meters away. Predators don't even need to search. The animal advertises itself. Researchers have documented that in some regions, this mismatch window, when coat color no longer matches the surrounding environment, has grown by several weeks over recent decades, and it directly affects survival. White hares on snowless ground die at significantly higher rates. Could evolution eventually fix this? In theory, if hares that molt later in autumn and earlier in spring survive better, their genes spread and the population gradually adapts. But evolution is slow, measured in generations, decades, centuries. Climate is changing fast, very fast. It's a race the hare may lose, not to a predator, not to a hunter, not to disease, but to a thermometer. I'll admit this was one of the most unsettling discoveries while researching this video. We tend to think of camouflage as an unconditional advantage, always under any circumstances. But when the environment changes faster than an organism can adapt, that advantage becomes a trap. The white coat that saved thousands of generations is now working against the very animal that carries it. A bitter irony. In England's Peak District, the only place in the country where mountain hares live, a 2024 study found the population had dropped from roughly 3,500 to just over 1,000 individuals in 7 years. If that trend continues, mountain hares could disappear from England entirely within the coming years. There's one place on Earth where hares exist unlike anywhere else. Rathlin Island, a small rocky outcrop off the coast of Northern Ireland. In isolation from the rest of the world, it hosts a population of Irish hares carrying a unique genetic mutation: golden pale reddish fur and vivid blue eyes. Golden hares. The mutation stems from a form of pigment deficiency, a type of leucism, and these animals exist only on this one island, nowhere else on the planet. A tiny population, fragile, vulnerable, and remarkably beautiful. A hare isn't just a fast runner or something else's dinner. It's a keystone species, a foundational piece of the ecosystem. Remove it and the entire chain topples like dominoes, pulling everything else down with them. Hares are a primary food source for dozens of predator species: fox, wolf, lynx, eagle, owl, hawk, marten, all dependent to varying degrees on this one animal. In years when hare populations crash, predator numbers crash right alongside them. This is called a trophic cascade, where a change at one level of the food chain triggers a cascading effect through every level above and below it. The textbook example is the 10-year population cycle between Canadian lynx and snowshoe hares, oscillating in near perfect sync. Plenty of hares means plenty of food. More lynx are born and survive. Lynx numbers climb. Hunting pressure intensifies. The hare population crashes. Lynx starve. Lynx numbers collapse. And freed from predation pressure, hares recover, restarting the cycle. This pendulum was first documented back in the 19th century through records from the Hudson's Bay Company, the legendary trading organization that kept meticulous records of fur pelts purchased from trappers, records spanning more than 100 years of continuous observation, one of the longest and most detailed ecological datasets in the history of biology. Hares also shape vegetation directly, gnawing bark off young trees, eating shoots, grazing grass. In moderate numbers, this is actually beneficial, stimulating new growth and maintaining plant diversity by preventing any single species from dominating. But at high densities, hares can seriously damage young forest plantations and orchards, which foresters and farmers know all too well. It's another facet of hare life, simultaneously prey, gardener, pest, and ecosystem architect, all depending on a balance that's genuinely fragile. Before we wrap up, a handful of details we haven't covered yet, but they're too good to leave out. A hare has no collarbone whatsoever. This lets the front legs move with greater range and better absorb impact during long jumps, the same principle behind a cat's shoulder structure, which is exactly why cats always land on their feet. A hare's teeth grow continuously throughout its life without ever stopping. The incisors add roughly 2 to 3 millimeters per week, about a centimeter a month, 12 centimeters a year. If the hare didn't wear them down gnawing bark and tough branches, they'd grow to grotesque lengths. Its heart beats at 120 to 150 times a minute at rest. Compare that to 60 to 80 in a human, and climbs even higher during intense running. A small, powerful, high-revving engine built for extreme output. Arctic mountain hares sometimes gather into groups of several hundred, which is unusual since we've established they're loners, but Arctic hares break that rule, clustering for collective defense against predators. More eyes scanning the horizon means a better chance of spotting a snowy owl or Arctic fox in time. The soles of a hare's feet, especially the mountain hare, are covered in dense fur that functions like natural snowshoes, spreading weight across a larger surface area and preventing it from sinking into soft snow. While a fox flounders belly deep, the hare glides across the surface. Home field advantage again. Hares communicate too, though not vocally. They rarely make sounds in ordinary life, but they drum the ground with their hind legs, a loud, sharp thump that serves as an alarm signal. And other hares feel that vibration through the ground and understand danger, stay alert. They can also scream a loud, piercing cry produced only in moments of extreme danger when a predator has them in its grip. It sounds unnervingly like a human infant crying, and hunters and naturalists who've heard it even once say it's impossible to forget. It goes straight through you. A hare can swim, though it doesn't particularly like to and won't seek out water on purpose, but if circumstances demand it, it will cross a river or lake, hind legs working like paddles, front legs steering. Not a semi-aquatic animal by design, but in an emergency, water isn't a barrier, it's just another escape route. Interestingly, brown hares actually prefer fat and protein-rich food over pure fiber. Given a choice between tough grass and, say, clover or soy, they'll always take the more calorie-dense option. In winter, when there's no choice, they switch to bark, and even then, they're selective, favoring willow and birch, stripping the outer layer to reach the inner tissue, rich in soluble carbohydrates. This isn't mindless gnawing, it's a deliberate choice of the most nutritious option available. The average lifespan of a wild hare is just 1 to 2 years. Of every 10 leverets born, only 2 or 3 survive to their first birthday, the rest taken by predators, disease, cold, or farm machinery. Mortality in the first year runs 70 to 80%. That's precisely why superfoetation, precocial development, and extraordinary fertility aren't quirks of nature. They're a hard necessity. Without these mechanisms, the species simply wouldn't survive. Now let's pause, exhale, and set aside the numbers, the facts, the Latin names, and just think about what we've actually learned today and what it means. We've taken this animal apart piece by piece. Its body, a running machine honed by evolution where every muscle, bone, and vessel serves one single purpose. Its eyes, seeing the world with almost no blind spots, 360 degrees of vigilance. Its ears, simultaneously a parabolic antenna and a cooling system. Its two-pass digestion, pulling complete nutrition out of tree bark and dry grass. Its superfoetation, the ability to carry a double pregnancy that virtually no other mammal on the planet uses as routine. Its milk, one of the most calorie-dense substances in the animal kingdom. Its young, ready to run within minutes of being born. Minutes, not days, not weeks. Its three-stage system for confusing pursuers. Double back, flank jump, freeze, sophisticated enough for a counterintelligence manual. Its role in the ecosystem, a foundation stone dozens of other species depend on, from foxes to eagles, and its relationship with us, thousands of years of hunting, mythology, symbolism, and profound fundamental misunderstanding. And here's what I've come to understand while putting this video together. The hare isn't a coward. It never was. The hare is a warrior. Quiet, unnoticed, stubborn. Its weapons just aren't fangs or claws. Its weapons are speed, intelligence, fertility, and an unbreakable, unbending will to live. It never gives up. Every day of its existence is a battle. Every dawn is a new challenge, and it meets that challenge again and again and again for 700,000 years running. We called it a coward because it runs. But think about what that actually means. Running at 80 kilometers an hour, laying false trails through a three-stage counter-tracking system, outwitting predators faster, stronger, and heavier than itself, surviving in a world where nearly every other creature wants to eat it, and still giving birth to young ready for life within minutes. Still carrying a double pregnancy just to outpace death itself. That isn't cowardice, that's courage. Quiet, daily, stubborn, unbreakable courage with no roar, no display, no drama. Just living, running, giving birth, running again, and refusing to disappear. The hare is a mirror. Somewhere in it, we unexpectedly see something familiar. The ability to adapt to circumstances stronger than we are, the ability to keep going when everything is against us, the ability to find a way out where there doesn't seem to be one. A white hare on brown ground is a metaphor for anyone who's ever found themselves out of place, out of time, out of step with their circumstances. The hare doesn't complain, doesn't wait for the world to change around it. It just keeps running. If I had to describe this animal in a single word, It wouldn't be speed and it wouldn't be fear. It would be resilience, quiet, unnoticed, daily, absolute resilience. The resilience of a creature that wakes every morning in a world full of danger and lies down every night still alive. A creature that refuses to vanish from this earth, categorically, irrevocably refuses. Respect them. They've earned it, and they always have, long before we ever learned to count, name, and classify. We've just spent too long looking at the hare and seeing nothing but long ears and a short tail. It's time we saw the rest. If you found this useful, I genuinely appreciate the support. Drop a like, and let me know in the comments what animal you'd want me to break down like this next. Because trust me, the next one is going to surprise you just as much.